something that you always talk about, something that you always thought was absolutely safe, but now it looks like it's not. One of the famous, world famous artificial sweeteners used in all your favorite diet colas and diet beverages that you love having because you think that you're doing the right thing by not having something that's loaded with the regular sugar. These artificial sweeteners that we're talking about, one of the most famous artificial sweeteners in the world is now under the cloud of being a carcinogen. And no less than the World Health Organization has flagged concerns and warned that this particular artificial sweetener is a carcinogen, as in consumption of it over a period of time can lead to cancerous problems, can lead to you getting cancer. I'm talking about aspartame, one of the most famous artificial sweeteners in the world, used by everybody in India and across the world. Aspartame, it was originally meant to be benign, absolutely no side effects, no issues, nothing worth people should be concerned about. But now, straight from absolutely nothing, we have a situation where straight from benign, and we now move to a situation where there's it is now being called a carcinogen. We have Mr. Dr. Dipanjan Panda, Senior Consultant Oncology, Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, set to join us as we try to understand aspartame. And we have Mr. Matra also joining us in the studio. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. Talk to us. This is incredible because none of us really thought this was going to be such a big problem. Leave alone a problem, we never thought this was even a small problem. But from a small problem, it's been now flagged as one of the biggest problems in the world, a cancer-causing ingredient.
So I think it's a big announcement and a labeling of this product. I think aspartame is used in most diet sodas, and it has also usage in everything which is called low sweet products. So it's just not sodas but several other drugs, and if you're buying a low calorie product, you'll often find aspartame in it. So this is a big announcement. I think this puts overall artificial sweeteners also under a cloud, because aspartame is not the only artificial sweetener. There are others like sucralose which may also be brought into under a cloud. So this is a big announcement from a health point of view, and obviously the right thing to do is to get off diet colas and such products. But again, how much of that will happen will depend on the amount of push the regulators make on labeling or even banning the substance in food.
I want to understand this better. Aspartame is one artificial sweetener and one of the most ubiquitous, so to speak. It's used in all these diet beverages and etc. etc. But what about the artificial sweeteners that we get, that we can buy over the counter?
So again,
are they okay?
No. So again, most of the artificial sweeteners over the counter are aspartame. Some of the more expensive ones are actually sucralose. So again, if you look at even sugar-free, for example, the standard sugar-free brand is aspartame, whereas the sugar-free Natura brand is sucralose. So that is slightly more expensive. So obviously there's a categorization. There's obviously stevia, which is a plant-based, I would say, sweetener, which is also more expensive. So it just means that if you're interested in having low sugar drinks, you have to pay more, because I think aspartame is dangerous. And by the way, the rumors of aspartame being a carcinogen have been around for several years. I think if you look at, it's not something new, which is why.
But what has changed now? I mean, if you can tell us, if these studies go on and on and on and on, but why is it that we are to be concerned about this now?
So the WHO study is significant because it labels it officially, right? So there is some credibility associated with the study. Now the action will depend on what the regulators do. Now if you look also intelligently at Coke, the Diet Coke product is still aspartame based, but the Coke Zero product is actually based on sucralose. So again, there also it doesn't affect all diet sodas. So I think the interesting thing to note is how will health regulators and food regulators respond to this labeling, right? In a lot of other cases, there could be three actions. One is do nothing, which is usually the response of most regulators. Second is a labeling, which you can ask, the cans can be labeled as carcinogenic. Or third is absolute banning, right? Unless you take sharp measures, I don't think there'll be any big movement towards giving these up, because this can be countered by marketing. And I don't think a lot of people who consume diet sodas will be deterred by the fact that it has aspartame, which may be carcinogenic. But again, this is official.
Right. Even now, it's going to be termed, it's yet to be termed a carcinogen. Yeah. Even as of today, as we have this discussion, aspartame is perfectly fine. It is not a carcinogen, but the World Health Organization study has flagged concerns that it could potentially be a carcinogen. My question here is that which artificial sweetener then is safe? My point is that, the level of diabetes rates in India and especially in South Asia, where, the need for sugar-free, anything, sugar-free beverages, sugar-free food, all of it is extremely high, and the demand for artificial sweeteners is very high. So what is the best way of going about choosing an artificial sweetener?
One is not consume any sugar, right? So I'll give you two responses, right? One, it's very hard to say which is safe because the consumption of these products has been less than a year. You typically need to do investigation over a longitudinal period of a decade at least. So maybe all artificial sweeteners may be found carcinogenic in the long term. So there's no right answer to which is safe. If you talk to doctors, they will also discourage you to consume artificial sweeteners. It's not that the doctor will tell that a doctor will tell you don't have Diet Coke, right? And don't have Coke. A doctor will rarely tell you to switch from a Coke to a Diet Coke. So again, in the long term, it's good to avoid such products in general rather than trying to say this will be safer than the other. But it's quite likely 5 years later, after you have enough data, some other products may be found to be carcinogenic or none of them may be carcinogenic at all.
Oh, okay. So all or none, you never know. We have Dr. Dipanjan Panda, Senior Consultant Oncology, Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, joining us now live on the broadcast. Dr. Panda, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Which artificial sweetener is safe? If in aspartame, which is the most ubiquitous artificial sweetener, which is there in all the diet colas and diet beverages, is not safe, what is safe?
So I think the question has two parts, whether it is safe or whether it is carcinogenic.
Yes.
Now, the problem about artificial sweeteners being carcinogenic is the debate is not new. It is going on since 60s. Unfortunately, there has been data from the animal studies which has found that use of aspartame has shown to increase some of the malignancies, including brain cancer, brain tumor, and some other visceral tumor. However, when you look at the major epidemiological study, it is not that convincing. So the major studies has shown the constant use of artificial sweetener may have some role in increasing cancer. The ratio of, if we do a case control study, there have been one major study from France, which has shown the ratio of, there is slightly increase in the incidence of cancers. It is about 1.3:1. But having said that, any form of artificial sweetener is not good for health.
Okay. I only asked this question, Dr. Panda, because I was asking Mr. Barnik the same thing as well. We are a country, we are a region. South Asia is known to be most prone to diabetes. Type 2 diabetes, if I want to be more specific. And, the demand for artificial sweeteners from Indians and South Asians is extremely high. We come from a market where there's always a need to cut out sugar. So are you telling us that the only way of dealing with this is that you actually cut out sugar? Not even a placebo is good enough.
Free sugar is not good for health. No, it is for nobody is good that you consume a lot of free sugar. And there is no way to deny that artificial sweetener is no better than conventional sugar. So yes, if we can avoid them, that's the best. Not only it is carcinogenic or it is not carcinogenic, it is simply not good for your health.
Okay.
It gives you loads of calories, which is not good. And that can lead to many other problems, including export. You are right. We are on the diabetic capital of the world, and it can lead to many other problems, including liver diseases. So, absolutely. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the lab data has shown that aspartame can cause cancers in mice. The human data, the robustness is slightly less, but if you do sufficient number of people, real robust epidemiological data, it is possible that it show that yes, it can cause cancer.
Okay. Dr. Panda, stay with us. Let me just take this back to Mr. Barnik. Looking at all those visuals, Mr. Barnik, all I can think of is what's going to happen to all those advertisements. What's going to happen to all those products on the shelves that are already there? What does it mean for companies? Were WHO to confirm the study and brand and classify aspartame as a carcinogen, what happens to all those diet beverages on our shop shelves?
Short answer, nothing happens unless the regulator steps in and takes drastic measures. So I think people will still continue consuming. The ad machines will still run. As I said, most of these companies have non-aspartame products as well. Coke Zero is a sucralose-based product. So if any, they will change the mix and move towards sucralose. But in the short term, nothing happens. This is another fancy study. I don't think people who consume these
and that's
products.
problematic. And that's problematic, isn't it? As Dr. Panda has, and you've been telling us, the question and the doubts of whether aspartame or all these artificial sweeteners are carcinogenic or not, the debate has been going on for a very long time. And we're even having this discussion again now simply because it is no less than the WHO. And the question is that there is a larger problem with the sugar content in all of the packaged foods and beverages per se. Be it artificial sweeteners or even natural sweeteners, the levels of the sugar content per se in products. For example, Nutella, if I were to start, Nutella, which we all think of as a hazelnut spread, a hazelnut chocolate spread, has nothing but 70% sugar. It is, if you include 70% of sugar and palm oil. Sugar and palm oil contribute 70% of Nutella. Your hazelnut and your chocolate and your milk solids contribute only 30% of Nutella. Isn't that sense? Doesn't this awaken everybody to just the sugar levels in all that's available in the shop shelves?
So if you look at the journey India is taking, I think just food labeling and ingredient identification has been a big win. I think so. India has already moved from a place 5-6 years back. You wouldn't actually know what you were consuming. So there has been a stringent. I think right now it's about consumer awareness and consumer movements, right? I believe that if you look at the younger generation, consumption of some products is actually going down. I think there the regulator can play a role. But if you compare with the marketing budgets of some of these deep-pocketed players who are pushing this, right? I think it's very hard to envisage consumption going down unless there's a concerted public health push and the government and the regulator steps in with either aggressive labeling, as they've done for cigarette packets, right? Or there's complete ban on some substances which have been proven to be carcinogenic. But I don't see us getting there at all. So again, I don't think anything much will happen, right?
Right, and nothing much will happen right now, Dr. Panda. That's what Mr. Barnik is saying. Nothing much will happen. You're also laughing on that front. But tell us, if something needs to happen, it's the consumer who's watching this, right? It's the average lay person who's watching this, who has kids in his house, his or her house, who needs to be more careful. And especially people who are, say, in their 30s, 40s, starting to move to other forms of sweeteners. They are the ones that they need to be careful.
Yes, so I completely agree with Barnik. I mean, it's very easy to be, pretty cynical. I mean, as he rightly pointed out, the deep-pocketed multinational companies' advertisement budgets is in billions, and sometimes it's like an Goebbelsian. So if you tell some half truth and lie day in and day out, ultimately they become truth. But having said that, I think I still have hopes that a concrete public movement, not only for artificial sweeteners, but a movement against all those artificial substances which are being pushed into our daily foods by different means. There should be a public movement against that. And as I said again, that it is not only a matter of carcinogen, whether aspartame is carcinogenic or not, in what doses and after how much of, because, from scientific perspective, we need robust epidemiological data to put that and those things. But there is no doubt that it is not good for your body.
Okay.
It's not helping you. So
if you can tell us where we can be more aware, Dr. Panda, what are the foods and beverages that are available that are generally consumed across the board that we should all be more aware of and make sure we completely cut it out from our consumption or at least keep it at the bare minimum?
See, think of all those cold drinks. I mean, what they have. They have some artificial sweeteners, they have some artificial colors, they have water, they have carbon dioxide. These all those potato chips and they have those having Ajinomotos and those, they are really not good for your health. I mean, some of them may or may not be actually harming you, but they are not doing anything. So you are basically pushing some junk foods. All those biscuits have only trans fats, which is basically quite harmful.
My question is that there are people who go for the Diet Coke, and then there are people who have the regular Coca-Cola. So in that sense, is it better to just have one Coca-Cola once a month and then don't bother having one Diet Coke a day? Because that's not really helping anything. In fact, making it worse.
I personally, I don't think. I'm not an expert on Diet Coke recipe. But I really don't think they help. I think it's best if we can avoid them.
Yeah, okay. The problem is that Dr. Panda, this is why I'm having this conversation, and Mr. Barnick, I'll bring this back to Mr. Barnick as well. Mr. Barnick has been rightly pointing out, people will not stop consuming. No matter what you do, even if they stop the advertisements, there are people who will continue consuming them simply because they're not aware enough. And my problem here is that, people of our age, it's sure to tell them to make some kind of sense to them. But what about the children? What about children whom we have to give in to some of their demands at some stage? And if a 5-year-old wants a glass of Coke, you're going to be able to give it to them. So I know from that perspective, I'm asking Mr. Barnick.
No, see, listen, it's a choice, and nothing in moderation actually harms. So I think it's about extreme consumption which helps, right? So
Okay.
I think in my personal opinion, I consume Coke and not Diet Coke because I would prefer to have a little bit of sugar than expose myself to artificial sweeteners. Right? And a big debate in the house, I have my coffee with sugar and not with artificial sweeteners because I would much prefer having 1 cup of coffee rather than having 5 cups with artificial sweeteners. So it's a matter
That's what I was asking. Dr. Panda, sorry, just hold on. I see that will bring this back to Dr. Panda. Dr. Panda, that's what I'm asking about. Isn't it better to go, regulate your sugar consumption, keep it extremely limited and have the classic regular sugar? Or it could be even brown sugar, or white sugar, as the case may be. Just stick to those sugars, keep it minimal as possible, and get on with it, and forget about any kind of artificial sweetness.
I mean, I'm okay with that. I mean, there is not much difference between actually brown sugar or white sugar. But I for that record, I take my coffee black. But
what about jaggery powder, sir?
And even jaggery powder doesn't help. They all have got your sugar. So you must understand that jaggery powder will have equal amount of sugar as much as white sugar. So that's not the people can have solace that taking jaggery is less sugary, but I don't think that's truth.
Palm sugar, sir.
Other nutritive values,
I'm keeping on asking questions because these are the solutions that are given to anybody who wants to cut down sugar. Take brown sugar.
I don't think what Dr. Barnick is saying. You minimize your sugar consumption. Just take minimum as much as possible, and if you can avoid them, that's the best.
Right.
It's a matter of taste. If you want to have a cup of tea, I would suggest you take it without milk and sugar and try the actual flavor of tea. I initially thought black coffee is bad, but I am now quite fond of that. So it's all matter of taste. But
so what do you have against dairy? I can have the chai. I can have the chai without sugar, but with the milk. What do you have against dairy?
No. Many of the Indians have actually lactose intolerance. So after having milk product, many of them can have So if you do not have a lactose intolerance, by all means, please go ahead and take your milk. But these are some of the common problems. Anyway, that's I think we're digressing from the fact. But yes, I agree. I personally also like to have a minimal amount of normal sugar than having those artificial sweeteners because I really don't think they help. They are not by substituting your sugar. It is better if you can cut down your sugar than try to have substituting your sugar and having some sense of comfort.
Point taken, Dr. Panda, from the doctor's mouth. Point taken. Take actual sugar. No. Drastically reduce the quantity of the sugar that you take.
Also.
But the problem is that you can reduce,
Please
sir.
Reduce your sugar consumption. I mean, that's the more important thing.
No, I have a different issue. In a muesli bowl or a packet of muesli, in a packet of cornflakes, it's very difficult to figure out how much sugar it actually contains, isn't it, Mr. Barnick?
So as per latest labeling norms, actually you will find that the quantity of sugar is actually labeled. They are labeling both added sugar. I think that's the important component. And a lot of these breakfast cereals are nothing but sugar delivery mechanisms. That's why kids love it, and that's why also we as adults love it. So I think in general, if you want to avoid artificial sugars or even processed sugars, stay away from processed food because all of it have inadvertently got processed sugar. And the other thing is about these variants which we now are getting popularized by the health movement and the D2C startups. I think all the publicity is coming from them, right?
Right.
If you look at the movement from fried chips to baked chips, right? If you really look at it from a nutrition and what it does for the body, they are not really healthy. They are just look different and they look cooler. So I would again not get
second red flag. Don't baked chips means nothing. Chips is chips. Chips is chips. You bake it, you fry it. Chips is chips.
So again, I would stay away from some of these fads, and again, listen to the good old doctor who will say neither is sugar good for you, neither is artificial sugar good for you, and everything in moderation helps. Cut down your consumption, and no, don't focus on fancy alternatives.
Right, I know. As you're saying this is yummy food. Images running over there of really yummy, sweet things that I really want to pop in my mouth right now. Dr. Panda, is the same thing. As we discuss the possibility of artificial sweeteners being carcinogenic, it's to do with all of this health fad and the messaging. That is misleading people in this health fad, isn't it, Dr. Panda?
Yeah,
Baked chips and etc. etc.
If I can just tell you, I think the parents have a lot to play in this. In smoking, we know if you do not smoke, you do not start smoking by age of 25, it is less likely you will ever be a smoker. So about this fast food and these Coke and everything, I think that addiction starts from the childhood. So if parents can actually control, and they can only control by being an example by themselves. So if in your breakfast, you can have more of a traditional food. So instead of cornflakes, you can have, poha or idli or, roti sabji. Like the good old normal healthy diet. The kids will eat. If you convince them, that's good. And once they eat it regularly, that's become their habit. So if you say that, no cold drinks, no artificial sweeteners. Initially, they may be, but if you remain consistent and persistent in your
Absolutely.
endeavor, that sounds a little old-fashioned, but I believe that is something which is good for everybody.
That's the only way of going about it. It looks like, Dr. Panda. It's not old-fashioned. It's new fashion. It's the future fashion. It's all fashion. Go back to your basics. Eat real foods. Eat real fresh foods. Don't eat processed foods, because the moment they get processed, they have all these chemicals going inside them, and God knows which one of them is carcinogenic. I'm afraid we've completely run out of time here in this discussion. I'm going to thank Dr. Dipanjan Panda, Senior Consultant Oncology, Indraprastha Apollo Hospital, for taking time out to be with us, and Mr. Banik for taking time out to come to us here in our studios. News9. Thank you, Mr. Banik, for taking time out to be with us. And whether it's a wrap here from my side, this is Krishna Kumar signing off. Keep it with News9.